Awesome. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. We're really happy to have you, from whatever department you are representing on your campus, whether it's student activities, student services, maybe just the political science division. Just thank you so much for joining us. We're really happy to give this presentation on the Student Civic and Voter Empowerment Act, or AB 963 from 2019. I have with me today the California Secretary of State's office, also a nonprofit organization that helped implement this bill, a band of voters. So I'll let them get into their presentations of themselves. But my name is Stephen Couture. I am with the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. I've served in student leadership. I have since graduated and now come on as staff as a community organizer. So you've probably seen emails from me if you are a student government advisor, always sending out some resources for you. I'm just happy to be with you this morning, and I will pass it off to Wendy to introduce herself.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today on this early morning. So my name is Wendy. I work with the California Secretary of State Students Vote Project, and we are the organization that implements the Student Civic Voter and Empowerment Act.
Awesome. And Joey?
Hi, I'm Joey Forsythe, and I'm actually an artist and a filmmaker. And in 2018, I started a band of voters with the mission of helping young people vote. And in 2019, our student advisory committee, we spent about 9 months working on this, drafting a law and trying to pass this law with the support of a bunch of other organizations. It's really nice to meet you today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let's get started. Let's give you just a little bit of a background of student civic engagement. How did it start? In getting the age group of 18 to 24 has always been a struggle in California. I mean, in 2014, only about 52% of all eligible youths were actually registered to vote. And that's significantly lower than all the other age groups. And only about 8% of those voters actually voted. And then in 2018, the youth voter, engagement actually rose. They got up to about 62% almost. And out of that, we actually had 27.5% actually voted. So, we really have been wanting to get more students involved. The California Student Vote Project was actually established in 2016, and they had resolutions and memorandums with each of the higher ed institutions. So the Cal State University, the community college system, UC system, to try and get more students voting. In 2019, though, a band of voters actually teamed up with California student leaders, and they drafted legislation, with the hopes of getting more students to vote. And we thank Joey for all the work that she did with her students. And they helped pass the Student Civic and Voter Empowerment Act. That's the full name or the full title of the AB 963. And as a result, really, the Secretary of State's, the Student Vote Project was really expanded. And they're really overseeing and implementing this monumental legislation because this is the first of its kind, in the nation. We're leading the way, trying to get more students, to exercise their civic duty and to really participate in the democratic process. So what does that mean for us as community colleges? Well, really, it means that we're legally required to help inform and mobilize student voters. We're trying to get our students to the polls. We want to increase the learning opportunities for student engagement and really just, educate them on the democratic process and really get them, fired up to be able to do that. So we're going to go through some of the requirements of the bill and how you as the civic engagement coordinators can really maximize students getting to the polls. So I'm going to pass it off to Wendy.
Yes. So there are 6 requirements to AB 963. For implementation. And so this is a high-level overview of what each component is to give you an idea, and then we'll go into them through each slide. So the first one is hire or appoint a nonpartisan civic and voter empowerment coordinator. Number 2 is to create an action plan. 3 is host civic engagement events. 4, send critical emails that include election dates and other important civic information. 5, include dates include those dates as well in the academic calendar, and also post them on social media for your students to see. So the first one, hire or appoint a nonpartisan civic and voter empowerment coordinator. So this is kind of where it all starts. So every project needs a point person. So a faculty or staff member needs to be able to drive the bill and implement the requirements of this bill. The coordinator will essentially oversee events with students, promote election dates, disseminate materials that we pack in toolkits or other materials that they may be on the receiving end of. Create an action plan with stakeholders such as students, the Civic Engagement Office, and other relevant parties. And then coordinators also help to preserve institutional memory. So you have someone that has the knowledge year after year versus having to start again every single year. And this is very helpful because elections are based on a 2-year cycle. So creating an action plan. So an action plan, that's the second one. And it essentially serves as a blueprint to ensure ideas become reality. This is very much what you would, the roadmap that would take to, excuse me, my dog is barking. So it will serve as a blueprint to ensure ideas become reality. So this is the roadmap that you would follow in the either a year cycle of the academic year or a 2-year cycle, depending on how you really have the liberty to structure this plan. Inform the Secretary of State's office as well, your intended goals to engage students over the course of the year. And action plans are this year, I actually due December 5th to our email at caststudentsvote. Sorry, it's caststudentsvote@sos.ca.gov. And as mentioned, a recommended action plan that you may follow could be, from new academic school year to end of school year or 2-year cycle. This year is an election year, so it is critical that you start working on it now or as early as possible so we can get some events happening towards the primaries and the November general election. Stephen, it looks like you're on mute. Oh, so we should be on slide 8. There we go. So I can continue talking about this portion as Stephen figures out how to get back to us. So maybe I can ask him to unmute. But essentially, this piece, oh, there we go, Stephen. You're good.
Thank you. Yeah, that for some reason it kicked me as a co-host, so I couldn't unmute myself. Thank you for doing that. So yes, we have our recommended critical components of an action plan. So, your action plan, as you're starting to develop them, they need to have the 6 requirements, right? Those are the 6 things that you need to do. But some things that you need to include in there and sprinkle throughout your action plan are how you are going to address, these 4 critical components. One is voter registration. How are you going to address voter registration on your campus? How are you going to maximize that with your students? How are you going to get them registered? And then voter education. How are you going to inform them of, ballot measures, candidates, and give them that nonpartisan, hey, these are some things that you need to know about this upcoming election. How are you going to increase ballot access? How can you get them to be able to fill out their ballot and actually, drop it off or go to the polls and actually do that? How can you increase their access to that ballot, getting them to the polls? And then, what are you going to do to address getting out the vote? So first one is voter registration. So when we come to voter registration, some of the things that you can do, one is campus-wide communication of just registration information. What is that? Well, we want to include links. We want to include important dates. And we really want to give them ample time for registration. We're not just sending out a link and saying, hey, tomorrow, you need to be here to be able to do this, right? So we want to make sure that we are giving them ample time. Use the registertovote.ca.gov /T=S. the way that we can get them to register through the whole ballot bowl, where there's the drop-down menu and they can select their college. So that way we can see how many students on your campus are actually signing up to vote. This helps us, when we're collecting that data later on, so we can see, how many of your students are actually signing up. We want to maximize by on-the-ground voter registration. We want to do education events and maybe actually combining them with other events that you're already doing. A lot of us on our campuses are doing club rushes or welcome weeks. If you set up another booth that's just a voter registration table, that's huge. Giving them, nonpartisan voter education materials, that's huge. Getting those students that are, already getting us at those touch points, that's just another way to maximize our voter reach. Some of us have campuses that have dorms, teaming that up with our move-ins. I know there's only like 11 of us right there. Having materials available at the food pantry. A lot of our colleges are implementing guided pathways. So our peer leaders, put them in our Canvas shells, Blackboard, MyPortal, whatever your campus is using, have maybe a shell that's designated just to voter registration materials. We want to have announcements also made by faculty or students. If a student's in a classroom, it's easy for them just to stand up real quick and make a little, 20-second announcement. Hey, if you need more information on where to register to vote, come stop by this office, student activities office, or whatever your office is on campus. Also participate in National Voter Registration Day. This year, that's September 20th. National Voter Education Week, which I will touch on later, is October 3rd through the 7th. And all of our other civic holidays. So, that's just another way for us to, get our students to the polls. Two of the other ones are voter education and ballot access. For voter education, it's easier for us to host events that draw students' attention to key races and measures, maybe hosting a debate watch party when that comes around. Question and answers, town halls are good. Usually we do that with our student elections. Distribute resources. The League of Women Voters actually provides a great nonpartisan ballot guide that's linked in this PowerPoint. The California Student Vote Toolkit, this whole presentation is actually based off of the toolkit. There's a link to the toolkit right there. We sent that out through an email to all of our advisors not too long ago, probably about a month ago. Use campus social media, posters, flyers to inform students of candidates, issues, deadlines. We will be sending out again a social media toolkit as we did with the recall election. A lot of the advisors said that really helped out. So we'll be doing that again this year to highlight the deadlines that are coming up. And you would have to adjust that just for your own counties, county candidates and issues. And then there's ballot access. How can we get these students to the polls? Well, one is to consider being a polling place. If you or an early vote site, having a drop box on your campus is huge. Students are already coming to campus. If they can fill out their ballot and just drop it off at the school because they're already coming for classes, that's a great way to do it. You would look into your county registrar of voters office to be able to do that. And if you're already doing that, that's awesome. How can we publicize that on our campus to make sure students know that it's there? Putting up posters and signs and making those announcements in classes is huge. One of the other things that's recommended, invite your election officials really to train your students, your faculty and administrators on proper completion. Sometimes students are trying to register to vote and they don't, click the right box or, sign in the proper spot. We want to make sure that those forms are being filled out correctly. So make sure that you're getting the right information. And then last is get out the vote. How can we really push getting out the vote? Well, the month before election day, we really want to be hounding our students, providing that information on vote by mail, early voting options. The closer that we are to election day, the more pertinent that information is going to be for our students. You all know how students are with deadlines. We stay up until the last minute, last hour trying to turn something in. So, if we want to just be giving those students this information right up until the deadline, that's huge. Students need to know how to register and how to cast a ballot. Some of our students are, just out of high school, never done this before. you know, they really need that education to be able to, you know, properly go and exercise their civic duty. So providing both sets of information through events, posters, flyers, social media, that's really critical. Maximize all the touch points, because some students only look at social media. Some students only look at their email. Not really. You know, some students only look at Canvas or whatever it is. So making sure that we're hitting all of those touch points. Another thing, we're always looking for our students to get job opportunities. Well, some students can earn money as poll workers. You know, to find out that information, let those students know so we can be strategic in really the recruiting process. Maybe we get the student a job as a poll worker and they never were going to vote before, but now they're going to because they're surrounded by it on a daily basis, right? There's in-person outreach. You can do phone banks, mass text, blast emails. You know, the SSCCC made stock emails last time so that you can just, you know, take an email, copy, paste it, send it to your chief informational officer, and they can send it out to all the students. We'll be doing that again this year for you. So, you know, look for those later on. Social media reminders, the week of, the day before, and the day of, right? We really want to maximize our students getting that information. And we always send out, as the SSCCC, we're always sending out the ballot bowl information. You know, we loved really maximizing our competition, right? And for us, as a community college system, we have 2.1 million students, 115, you know, on campus or physical campuses, and we're not the ones winning. So why aren't we doing that? We see the most students. We should be able to register the most students to be able to vote. So if you want to learn more about that, we'll also be sending out some emails and stuff like that. But ballotbowl.sos.ca.gov shows you how to really how to register and how to get your students registered to vote and get them qualified for that ballot bowl. I think this last year, I think CSU Irvine, was that right? Or UC Irvine was the one that won?
In 2021, it was, for the recall election, it was Chico State that we
Chico State. There we go.
In last week.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, why can't it be a California Community College campus? So let's make sure that that happens this year. And on to Wendy.
Yeah. So as mentioned, the action plan. So there is a setup in terms of how we can make this happen in structure that is really effective and helpful to guide each piece. So the first, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. The first one being leadership. So we want to make sure that we put who is involved in this action plan making. So when you turn in that template, we're able to see, you know, who we can reach out to and maintain that relationship between the Secretary of State and yourself. We really want to serve as a support system, and that's why we seek that contact information. Then the introduction piece. So mentioning the importance of civically engaging students and lessons learned, goals and actions. So this is kind of the meat of the template. So outlining what are you aiming to do this year, what events and strategies will you have, and what are some of the highlighted dates, as well as who can you work with, community partnerships, how can you maximize, you know, you may not just want to stay on campus, you can work with partnerships outside or even with student organizations. And then the last piece is evaluation and reporting. So the NSOB, which we'll talk about later in this slide, is a really good way to look at student voter data, or even reaching out to our office. We also have data on student voter registration numbers due to the ballot bowl, but also just on a yearly basis, we track how many students register using our unique link.
Awesome. So another thing that we want to do is host our civic engagement events. And most of you come from the student activities department. You know, this is right up your alley. You're always the one hosting events, teamed up with the student government, hosting events on campus. So each college is actually required through the bill to have at least 3 events centered around civic education, around voting, or registering to vote before the end of each academic year. So at least one of these events must be within the 30 days before each November general election. So every 2 years, you have to have at least one of these events within that last month. And this is really, like I said earlier, to maximize getting our students to the poll, because as as close as it is to election day, that's the, it's going to stay in their mind a little bit more. So include these 3 events in your action plan, whatever those events are going to be. We want to see what events are working, put them in your action plan so we can see that. Invite all of your students to organize or to participate. We've been seeing that peer-to-peer events are huge. Not just our faculty leading events, but the students leading the events themselves. Having that student-to-student contact. So, invite, student organizations on your campus to really host these events, and really inviting all of our students to participate. The events can be sponsored by student organizations. So if a student org wants to come in and host the event themselves, as I said earlier, that's totally allowed. Make sure that you're aware of what's going on, and have your hand in it. So that way we can be putting it in the action plan and seeing how it's going. But as I said, events closer to the elections have that higher impact. Ask the clubs, the student government to host some of these events. Just to be able to maximize our student touch points. Some of these events, some of you are already doing Constitution Week. How can we put voter, registration, voter education, and just the whole voting process into Constitution Week? Think strategically there. Students are already coming to be educated there. So how can we really maximize that? Do voter registrations tables, set those up in high contact areas, right? We want to set it right outside the student activities area or where students are filtering in. National Voter Registration Week, if you take a look at the National Voter Registration Week website, they have a specific duty each day, Monday through Friday. One day is focused on registering, one day is focused on something else. So make sure that you check out that website and plan for that Voter Education Week that's happening this week or this year in October. Definitely make sure that you're utilizing all the resources that are available to you. Those ones are going to actually team up with some of the other campuses because National Voter Week is happening throughout the nation. Town halls, host a town hall on some of the issues that are coming up. Maybe invite some of the local candidates to your campus. They love doing those types of events. That'd be huge to get our students really involved. I know Joey's worked with some student leaders throughout the state that have hosted some of these events. So I wanted to give her a quick opportunity to be able to share some of those ideas. You're muted, Joey.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention, we really believe students should be at the center of the action planning process as well, but we truly believe in the power and the creativity of student leaders organizing and hosting peer-to-peer events. So we had a program in 2018, it was called Party to the Polls, and we reached out and found a number of student leaders and offered them a $2,500 grant and an arts-based educational toolkit to host events on Halloween and Election Day. The only catch was free food, and I highly recommend free food at your event to get students to show up. Anyway, at UCLA, Selena Avalos, a wonderful young woman, and her team hosted an incredible event outside the campus polling place on Election Day. She was offering 3 different cuisines for dinner. She had jumpy houses, wrestling, inflatable wrestling. But they were also, offering help with same-day voter registration and helping people understand how to fill out their ballots. On-campus voting in that midterm went up 537%. And overall, Selena did a number of events, and overall midterm voting went up from 4,500 in 2014 to over 16,000 in 2018. That is more than the entire winning vote margin in Arizona in 2020. So we think students really have the power to mobilize their peers, and we encourage you to encourage that in your students. Anyway, thank you.
All right, so so number 4 is part of the requirement to implement this legislation, AB 963, is send critical emails. So emails that include information that would be useful for the student body in terms of when elections will happen. So there actually are specified information that we have in a toolkit that the Students Vote Project created, and we also will be sharing it out after this presentation. But it should include things, or it is required to include things such as statements on vote by mail, voting in person, and dates and times and locations. So we also have links that should be included that would be helpful for students to know is the student voter registration link, the link to our election information website, our link to the voter information guide that is also sent out to mail, through mail, a link to voter status, so students can check what their status is and where they're currently registered to vote, and where will they receive their voter information guide and voting materials. So that's also an important link to be aware about. And then Students Vote Project, our own website that we also have at the Secretary of State's page. And then a disclaimer just stating that information varies by county. So what may be true in LA County may not be true in, say, San Diego County, or a different county, because we go by different, so some are considered voters' choice and some aren't. And that's important that students just be aware that they can also look into their specific county elections page, and that would give them more, I guess, accurate information. And then also an email with a statewide voter information guide and a sample ballot should be also sent out for students. And essentially the same information also applies to the next 2 requirements. So the number 5, which is, see if we go to the 5th one. So include dates on academic calendars. So it's essentially including dates on the academic calendar is, so I know all students receive or have access to an academic calendar, and this is a great spot to really highlight these requirements there, because that's where students will be seeing it constantly, and not just students, but also faculty would have access to these academic calendars. And it would include National Voter Registration Day. So it happens the 4th Tuesday in September, the last day to register to vote online, which is 15 days before election day. So this is also true for both the June primary and the November election. Voting by mail dates, last day to register to vote in person, county early voting days. So it goes back to the information that could vary by county, depending on where the campus resides or where the student is voting, and include information for the primary and general election dates. And then the 6th piece, which is post on social media, it's again that information that we had mentioned for the emails, including that information. So once you kind of have a packet, and we're also working on kind of making this easier for you all. So we're working on a key dates document that you will be able to just look at and say, okay, so these, what is the 4th Tuesday of September in 2022? And it would have that information there for you to just reference and be able to transfer it onto social media and or emails. As well as place it on the academic calendar. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible. So we'll also have that sent out once it is ready to go. But we do want to make this process as easy and fun too. So just be on the lookout for that. But so again, we work through making resources for you all. So if you all have any help with creating graphics, we can definitely package that up for you. We create toolkits on our website, studentsvoteproject.sos.ca.gov, and also just including information on conditional voter registration and early and same day, or also known as same day voter registration, as well as election day for social media on the day before and day of. And then I hand it over to Steven so he can cover the materials that they will also offer this year.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. So, during the recall election this past year, what we did is we sent out some social media toolkits when we sent them to the advisors, because we thought, hey, the advisors are the first contact with students. Let's see if, they can utilize this material. We also sent a survey asking, what are some things that you'd like to see? The survey came back and it was like, this was very helpful. We love social media toolkits because as advisors, I already know you wear like 50 million hats. You're doing food pantry and everything else. So the social media toolkits, if you can just grab an Instagram post from our social media toolkit and drag it over to your Instagram and just post it there, that's huge, right? It saves a lot of time and effort on your part. So last year we teamed up with a band of voters. We put together these very fancy recall election, nonpartisan information guides, and we sent those out. They were a huge hit. So we're going to be doing that again. We asked what are some of the other materials. Some of the things they said was more training. You know, that's why we're doing this. We'll try and have another one maybe later on in the year to help you, you know, create those action plans before the deadline. Another thing that we heard was stock emails. So, you know, we'll try and make those stock emails for you. So that way you can just copy and paste. So all of those resources, if there's other resources that you can think of that you might want some help with, please don't hesitate, shoot me an email. I'll put my email in the chat. It's also at the end of this presentation, but reach out to us. We're trying to help and give you the resources you need to make sure that students are being, or their needs are being met, right? And you know, that goes for everything, not just with you know, civic and voter empowerment, but we want to do that and be that resource for you. So definitely be looking out for those.
Yes, and also we wanted to mention things to keep in mind. So California community colleges may request reimbursement from the California Commission on State Mandates. So I know it's a lot of long words, but essentially this is the process that you're able to say, hey, if there's a cost associated with this implementation, you're able to file a claim with the Commission on State Mandates, and they're able to evaluate your claim and decide whether or not they would consider it to be a reimbursable expense. But that is definitely an option that can be something that you may choose to go through. We also have information, so I put in the chat a link to our toolkit, and we have information more on that process. And also, if you have any questions about the process, please feel free to reach out to our office, and we'll make sure to make that connection for that reimbursement process with the Commission on State Mandates. And I want to emphasize to please begin your action plan early. We know that the school year gets busy. I know that there's student leaders in transition from this past school year to this new school year. So we want to start now so we can then just follow this roadmap instead of having to do things on the spot. You already have an idea, a set roadmap blueprint to be able to I guess, act out on your action plan, to act on it. So we have the primary election happening on June 7th and the general election happening on November 8th. But it's important that the students are prepared beforehand. So when that day actually happens, they're ready and they feel confident voting. It's more than just, as Steven mentioned earlier, like, hey, here's the information. It's more so a process of, like, you know, there's 15 days to register online beforehand, and all that information is part, again, that we're working to have into a one-pager. So you're able to just reference those key dates and kind of guide you as you're making this action plan. So we really wanted to make that an easier process. And then the last point that I wanted to mention is, so once again, completed action plans are due on December 5th of this year to our email at caststudentsvote@sos.ca.gov. And so essentially we'll collect these action plans and really want to know what you all are doing and even get to share best practices as to, like, what is working on your campus, what isn't working on campuses, and be able to, like, share that information with other campuses who may be struggling or just starting to implement this piece of legislation. And then I hand it over to Joey.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that there's a lot of resources out there. Action planning has been going on for a long time, and there's a lot of samples and examples. So I just wanted to offer a few other ideas for resources. We are actually launching a new program. We had Party to the Polls. Now we are working with a select group of campuses. I wish we could work with everyone, but we are sort of initiating this program called the Campus Champions, and we're offering a paid fellowship and our direct support. We are also just now reaching out to funders to see if we can actually provide grants again. But I am putting in the chat, hopefully, yeah. If you're interested, right now we are looking for fellowship to start these fellowships. We are primarily working in Southern California because that's where we're based, and we want to be able to visit with students. But if you have a student that you would like to recommend, who can assist you and the institution with implementing this legislation. For a lot of you, this will be the first year. So the idea is to have extra hands to help you implement the law. Please apply or please share the application. The other thing is we're starting a newsletter and we'll have all sorts of updates about other trainings. We're going to try to do actually action planning trainings with other organizations. The All-In Campus Democracy Challenge does action plans with I think they have 1,000 campuses across the country. And if you submit a plan to them, they will help you just give you some guidance on that. And they have great resources. There's a slide that's coming up with their links, but if you reach out to us, we can share that with you. And they're the ones who started National Voter Education Week. Yeah, maybe something is there. Anyway, and finally, what I wanted to say is if you submit an action plan by May 31st to a band of voters, we are holding a drawing for a $2,500 grant. It may end up being more if we get some more donors on board, but it has to include 3 peer-to-peer events in the fall of 2022. Oh, and also, yeah, they must be led by students. We really believe students should be at the center of this process. In part because the young people that we worked with, we provided grants to, they have gone on to do incredible things. And they were incredible to begin with, but this program, I think, really helped to build their confidence because we're also hoping that, we're training the future leaders of our state and our country. So I really encourage you to engage your students in this process. I look forward to hearing from all of you and hopefully connecting with many of you. Thank you.
So yeah, we have our best practices for increasing student civic engagement. We had said this earlier, the NSOLV, which is the National Study for Learning, Voting, and Engagement. It gives you the registration and voting rates at your school. It's free, it's confidential, so definitely make sure that you register for that. It's a way for you to see the voting rates, how they have increased or decreased over the years. So what's working, what's not working on your campus. Definitely look into that. And one of the other things is convening a group of individuals. We really want to see, as Joey said, students at the forefront. So we want to see students in your planning process. So convene like a committee, a task force, with just stakeholders from different parts of the campus. So your student faculty leaders, your student clubs, maybe if you have some democratic clubs on your campus, student affairs, academic affairs, if you have a governmental affairs department on your campus, and just kind of plan a campus-wide effort. This will definitely help your action plan. So ask of each of the departments, what can you do to increase voter registration and to increase voter education? Get all of their ideas, get all the ideas from all the different departments, put that together all in your action plan. So that way you have a collected effort of everybody on your campus, what they all can do. And as Joey kind of stated earlier, she can kind of give you a little bit more information, but there are also some more coalition partners. We have the All-In Campus Democracy Challenge, the Students Learn, Students Vote. They have sample action plans. There's their emails right here. And they just have more resources for you to create a great action plan. They can help you sign up for the NSOLV. And they also have competition and funding. Joey, is there anything else you want to add on that?
We actually have a resource guide also that we created that has additional organizations and resources to help you out with this. But I would reach out to them and to us because we really are here to help you. The first year is always the hardest. And so please take advantage of all of us. And I think that hopefully we're going to be at the General Assembly sometime between April 1st and 3rd to also host training sessions with students there as well. So maybe we'll get to see some of you or your students there.
Awesome. So just in closing, wanted to give you some email addresses that you can come back and see. So there's my email address. There's a website to the SSCCC, the Students Vote Project. That's their website. There's Wendy's email. If you need to get a hold of them, a Band of Voters, there's their email address, and the emails to both Joey and to the newsletter. So, be looking for those social media toolkits. If you're registered for this event, we have a list of you now. We sent out a survey just a couple weeks ago, trying to figure out who that coordinator is on your campus. We'll drop that link right now into the chat, so that way we can have your information to send you more information throughout the course of this year, and in subsequent years also, so that we can provide you as much resources as possible. Anything else from any of my presenters? I think we're going to open it up right now for questions. If you have any questions, please ask them. There's probably some other, advisors or coordinators on here that might have the same question as you. So please ask them. We have the Secretary of State's office here who is overseeing this whole implementation. So now's a great time to be able to ask. So I see Dr. Slade.
Yes, hi. How are you, Stephen?
I'm doing great.
Good. I have a question and a concern. With us being virtual, I have been struggling to even maintain any semblance of student government at Solano. I was down to 3 senators at one point. I now have 6. They're all graduating in May. I am struggling trying to get more students to join the Senate. We're supposed to have an election. I have no one. So here's my concern. I understand there's a time limit involved and there's certain things that need to get done. What happens if I miss my deadline? If all my students are leaving me, if I don't get new senators before the end of the semester, I'll have no one for the summer. I'm just concerned that I'm not going to be able to implement some of these things that you're requiring because I don't have enough bodies. I'm also responsible for graduation and early alert and the student senate. And, it's like the list is endless. And Stephen, you know me well enough. I'm going to give it my best shot no matter what. But I'm just worried. Will we be penalized if I'm unable to meet some of these deadlines?
That's a great question. So I know everyone is struggling right now with just student engagement, student participation. I've attended quite a few, student government meetings, and some of them had, like 2 individuals. When has that ever happened, right? We have so many students. So many organizations out there, student organizations that are just struggling. So I can feel you there. I know the struggle, and I'm sorry for all of you that are, doing that. And like I said earlier, you as advisors are wearing so many different hats, having to juggle so many different things. I'm going to direct this question to Wendy. What can we do to be able to support? Also, what are some of the, as she said, penalties, if any, for missing deadlines?
So I think the biggest, quote unquote, penalty would be really on, all this information is really for students to make their voice heard. I think just them not being able to show up and show out at the polls and have them, feel empowered in that sense would be, I think, the biggest loss there. And I think I see that a lot of people have the same sentiment in terms of how many hats they wear. But again, we're here to support, and you're not alone in this process. Like we would love, to use you all as well as an avenue to reach students. So we create and we prepackage a lot of things already. We have done so for the 2020 election, and we did so for the 2021 election, that they're already prepackaged and they're toolkits that can just be sent out to students so they can access this information. And so having that streamlined process of maybe starting with a listserv, if you have access to a listserv, using that to reach, the people who matter in this case, the students. So in that way, we're able, because we work, I think, so removed from the groundwork happening. And so having you all as conduits to be able to transfer that information, I think would be helpful for us and also make your job a little bit easier. So that's something that I think I do want to mention. And I know this might maybe the first time you're hearing about the Students Vote Project or seeing myself, but we, given the past 2 years of the pandemic and really now we're trying to really make sure that this is something that is a priority, and we're able to support those who need that support, and also just support each other. If you know, campus is doing very, very well in terms of like getting out engagement and the vote, you know, communicate amongst one another. I'm not sure how streamlined that is, but using each other as resources would be helpful too, or our office as well, as I've mentioned before.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback off of what Wendy said, I think this really, who's going to get hurt the most is just the students themselves, not receiving the information or not being able to, you know, hear the information, as far as them coming in and, you know, oh, you didn't do this. We haven't seen that yet. But make sure that we're doing everything within our power to be able to get the students the resources that they need. You know, this is not, you know, completely funded. We, you know, it's not a funded mandate. You know, you could request funding for some of your events, but it's, you know, it's on the onus is on the campus to either appoint somebody or hire somebody. I saw in the chat, you know, if we had some money to actually hire somebody that this was their, you know, strictly their job, that'd be huge, right? But we can't do that for every campus. So
I'd like to just jump in for 1 second to address that. My husband was the dean at Pasadena City College. And when we put this law together, we fought for an appropriation. And we did a cost analysis, and there was supposed to be money in the budget for this. We are going to work on this next year to amend the legislation. But in the meantime, what we are suggesting is that you actually hire a student to be an assistant to help you implement this law. And I'm sorry that it kind of got by us as a funded mandate, but it is a funded mandate. You should be reimbursed for this. But in the meantime, we will work next year to make this an appropriation. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Joey. I did see in the chat, you know, trying to partner up with Academic Senate, you know, your political science teachers. You know, there's a lot of, if we put the call out there, there are going to be individuals that can really help and really have a passion for this. You know, this is about student representation. You could probably be able to use some of your SRF funds to be able to you know, maximize your outreach. But yeah, thank you for that question. You know, we're going to do everything within our power to be able to try and advocate for you know, getting our students those resources and doing everything that we can. Any other questions?
The other comment I'd like to make is please reach out to us, because maybe we can offer some support in terms of the fellowship. We're also putting together our toolkit, and it's kind of a turnkey thing. You can kind of just use it to create an event. So please feel free to reach out to us if you're struggling. We really want to support you on this. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Federal work study, that's great. SRF funds, yeah, think beyond the political science department. You know, this does affect all of our departments on campus. But yeah, any other questions? We will be sending this PowerPoint out. It has all the links in it. We'll send out the recording also. You know, try and use that survey. If you have not registered who your campus coordinator is yet, please use that survey. So I have those emails. I can send them off. You know, the Secretary of State's office does want to keep track of who the coordinator and the point person are. Yeah, that's great. My grad students are always hungry to get experience in the field. You know, try and utilize whatever your college has to offer. Any other questions? I'm not hearing any. But if that is it, I will drop some links right now. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate what you do. Please don't hesitate to reach out. But on behalf of the SSCCC, Secretary of State's Office of Band of Voters, thank you so much for coming, and we hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.